Welcome to AI in Motion, the podcast for leaders under pressure to do AI without breaking their teams, their brand, or their judgment. Hosted by Carol Lynn Jardine, Esma Stewart, and Megan Ratcliff, co-founders of Clarity in Motion Collective, and operators building and leading with AI in the real world. Each episode brings you conversations with operators, CMOs, and builders navigating AI where it actually counts, inside real workflows, real organizations, and real constraints. What's working, what's not, and what it really takes to move from experimentation to impact. This is AI in Motion.
Bye, Justin.
Hey, Megan. Thanks for having me on today.
Yes. So, quick intros. Justin is one of our trusted advisors and friends of Clarity in Motion, and he owns an AI consulting company called Justin GPT. And I'm Megan Ratcliff, your host, one of the partners over at Clarity in Motion Collective. So today I wanted to talk to you specifically about AI agency. I even just saw something on LinkedIn today that was talking about this subject, and somebody had posted that really only 6% of people claiming that they're building AI agents are actually building AI agents. And I think that's probably a pretty close estimate on who is actually building these things. So I just wanted to start with a little bit of definition on what is an actual AI agent and what does agency mean?
Yeah, I think it's great that we start with a bit of ground rule setting and definitions to align everyone on the conversation. But I think maybe 6% is generous, by the way. I don't know
I
where
think
you
you're
saw
probably
that, but
right.
yeah, I think there's new things coming out all the time that are maybe helping raise that percentage too. And maybe we'll talk about some of those things in a little bit, like Claude Cowork and Claude Code. But yeah, when I talk about AI agents and I'm building AI agents for my clients, what I mean is an AI that can do things on behalf of the user with a tool set, context engineering that it's been given for its job to be done and instructions on how to go do its job. But then after that, it's really allowed to go and do whatever the user needs it to do on its own and then return back to the user with the work product. And I think that there's multiple ways to think about an agent being triggered or invoked or called in to perform a task. That could be via a chat interface like we're all familiar with from ChatGPT, or it could be on some sort of cadence or even triggered from an event like a new lead is created in Salesforce or something like that, right? And your agent is doing something on your behalf. But I think a lot of people, get confused about the topic, and that's what I mean. And I think that's what the true definition would be.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think the term agency has just taken off and it has so many different meanings to so many different people. And so one of the things that I always like to do is dispel it a little bit because agency is highly complicated and complex, and very few people are actually doing it and doing it well. What most people are building are custom GPTs or gems or even skills in Claude, for instance. And so building an actual agent with agency is very complex, usually requires somebody with a lot of expertise to build it. So I know that you are one of these people that has these expertise, which is why I like to talk to you and why I like to work with you. But do you have an example of an agent that you've built recently that you could tell us about?
Yeah, I've built a couple of interesting things recently, and these are also things that have come up over and over again with go-to-market teams. So,
Yeah.
if we have a lot of folks listening to this that are in that land, this will hopefully resonate with them. Two agents, or actually three agents I'll describe right off the top that, are very common for my customers and the folks that I work with. One is just a basic lead scoring agent. This is an agent that is passively listening whenever a new lead comes in your inbound motion. It's going to look at the lead, look at your criteria for, fit, ICP, personas, things like that. And then it's going to take the information from that company, look at like the level of the person that has, come in inbound. It can do all of this without passing PII anywhere. It can use tools like Clay and HubSpot and things like that, Salesforce to help it, pull that in, extract that information about the lead and then go out to the web, verify that that's all true, and then score that lead against your fit criteria. And then let your sales team know, hey, this is a really good fit lead. Here's some of our content that's like well aligned to this persona. Here's some potential messaging for your outreach and follow up. And even develop like just in time content based on maybe some of your one pagers or battle cards or something like that that might be helpful and tailored to that lead and what they're talking about. Another agent that's really common that I've been building with Claude and with other systems lately is a competitive monitoring agent that basically is working on a weekly cadence, daily cadence, monthly cadence to go out and look at all of your named competitors, pull down any recent news about that competitor or positioning and messaging changes that may have occurred, look at your current competitor documentation, your product set, your positioning and messaging, and then put together an analysis, log that analysis in some system of record and develop new battle card content. This is more of like an agentic system where there are like multiple agents working together with like an orchestrator agent that kind of keeps them all in concert and collects all of their responses. I've seen people like extend this even further to enable like CSMs with their account lists, right? Where they have a very similar workflow where agents are listening and monitoring for news about your account that would trigger a CSM to outreach that account and maybe their point of contact and say, hey, I saw this or that. Like, should we schedule a call and talk about how our products can help you? But those are three pretty common things that I keep building
Yeah.
over and over again that folks get a lot of value out of.
Yeah, I can see that. I think the first one that you talked about, the lead score, goes beyond lead scoring. It sounds, and one of the things that I talk about a lot is when do you automate the edges of a workflow versus when do you automate the entire workflow? Because there's like a human in the loop element in some cases. And one of the examples I always use is lead scoring is a great example of something that can be automated end to end because there are rules that you can set up that are easily like repeatable rules. Tell me a little bit about your criteria that you have when a client is approaching you and you guys are trying to figure out, we want an agent. And you're like, cool, what kind of an agent do you want? What's the criteria that you use to decide, yes, this is something that should have agency versus, no, this is probably like a few human in the loop tools that we need to string together because actually you should be involved here.
Right. There's actually a AI suitability matrix that I put together to identify when a job to be done is right for AI. Several vectors like out of the box that I recommend people consider and take a look at. One of those is repetitiveness. Is this highly repetitive thing that you're doing? Is this a rules-based workflow in nature, right? Like lead scoring fits the criteria pretty well for rules-based. Is there data available for context engineering and context for the AI to work with? Is the outcome measurable? So in lead scoring land, that's very measurable. We're literally scoring. Is there human judgment required? And the more human judgment that's required, the less the fit is aligned. And what's our tolerance for error, right? If this thing fails or errors, is it going to result in some catastrophic failure, right? If the answer is yes, ever to that question, do not ever use an agent for that work, right? Hey, if catastrophic failure is a potential outcome, even if it's 1% or 2%, if you allow an agent to take over this job to be done in this workflow, it could potentially scale that 1 or 2%. And maybe, over the course of a year with people doing it, 1 or 2% error is okay because the scale is very low. But when you automate it, the scale can increase rapidly and that 1, 2% in frequency can start to show up much more often. And your catastrophic failure events are happening much more frequently. And that's horrible, right? So never involve an agent if catastrophic failure is the potential outcome.
Yeah, I call that risk. And so I guess people's risk tolerance probably varies from organization to organization.
Right.
But help me think about, you mentioned data. Is there data available? I know from talking to several go-to-market leaders and CMOs and they're all like a little bit scared of the data piece of it because I have never seen an organization that has all of their data together in a really good spot. So, talk to me a little bit about where somebody's data needs to be in order to jump into building an agent.
Yeah, this is a real tricky component of the whole process, right? And I'm sure a lot of people on this call have seen this graph that I'm about to describe, but if you've ever seen like the MarTech stack as it exists today, and you've seen the chart of 25,000 companies that exist out there, you can't even see the logo because it's like, tiny. You have to like zoom in times 10 to even see like one company's logo. But that describes the problem very accurately, right? When you look at all these different MarTech tools, your data is living in all of these. And if you look at any one person on your team, their day-to-day operations and the jobs that they do, every single one of them has a unique combination of these tools, right? And a unique combination of this data. And so this is the real problem for your team and for AI. Your data lives everywhere. It's very disparate. The more you can centralize your data, the better. You just said you've never seen anyone have a centralized data environment, which, I also agree. I've never seen it, honestly. But I know that the next paradigm of agents and AI that is about to come is a paradigm where you're going to have reinforcement learning trained models, where what that means is it's a model that's trained on how to do a job on a computer. And these models, if you give them access to all of the data, they're going to be able to do their jobs much better. And that environment is going to push companies to centralize their data in the future and very rapidly. And that eye chart is going to consolidate down to like things that you can see at a glance, right? And there's
Yeah.
going to be like a handful of places that your data will be with like agents running on top of that data. And that's probably what the future will look like. But today, thinking in terms of like systems thinking and thinking in terms, my CRM has my contact record data, all of my persona documentation is over here in Google Drive or SharePoint or wherever I have it. We send email with like Instantly or, MailChimp, whatever your email client is. And having AI work in with all of these different systems and being able to map the data to the AI just in time for it to have that context to perform the job to be done is very difficult. And so those systems thinking things, those transforming data from like the way it exists in your CRM to the way it exists in your email client to the way it exists in another system, and have AI process all of that and then output it in another way, right? Have the data output in the right schema for the endpoint that you need or the artifact that you're trying to develop. That is going to be a challenge in the interim that, folks that we advise are going to have to face. And I do a lot of work helping people understand how to map data and transform data between all of these different steps in an agentic system or an agentic workflow. I spend more time doing that, honestly, than building the workflow itself.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's where a lot of time is spent these days when you're trying to build agents and you're trying to build, these kinds of flows and systems.
I often think about what a company has to have in order for them to be successful and not only using this technology, but truly scaling it and making it an integral part of the way that they work. And one of the layers is this intelligence layer, which is, do you have all of your data in a spot that's accessible for an agent and in a way that the agent can read and perform a task? The intelligence layer to me is one of the trickiest to figure out. The other ones are the context layer, the orchestration layer, which is what you're building when you're building an agent, and then the human judgment layer. And so having all four of those stacked on top of each other are what needs to happen to like really run. But that intelligence layer is so tricky.
I think about it, I mean, in layers like that as well. I also think about it in terms of, components for an agent to be successful. I think there are probably 8 components, the flow, the data, the system, the AI model, the context, prompting, tools that the models have access to or the agent has access to, and then the output. And if you think about things in terms of that or in terms of the layers that you're talking about, you'll be able to connect the dots and successfully build agents deliver real value.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious too if you've ever walked into a situation where your client is describing an agent that they want and you said no. What was the
Yes,
situation? What?
absolutely. I actually was just talking with a e-commerce company that they have 12 agents that they want to build to help them do various different things. They operate in an e-commerce environment where they have storefronts in, all kinds of different properties, Amazon, Shopify, a million other places. And that data problem exists where they have data scattered throughout, all of these different things, including Meta ads, Google ads. And they wanted to create this, you know, reporting agent that is basically helping their finance and operations teams plan, do resource allocation, make buying decisions with their factories about what they're going to produce more of or less of. And it was a really cool idea, right, for this reporting agent. However, I, scoped this for them and I was like, hey, your data is everywhere. For an agent to do this job successfully, we have to centralize the data. We have to build a, data pipeline into a centralized location. And that is essentially table stakes for this agent to even be built. And that's not a cheap thing to do. If you've ever built that before or done mass data management before or worked in e-commerce before, like, these are expensive things to develop. And looking at the price tag on that, they kind of got sticker shock on what it would take and, weren't willing to pull the trigger to make the investment to have this centralized data layer. And I basically had to tell them that, of the 12 things you want to do, 4 things are still possible. Right. And so I had to help them scope down and prioritize the things that are possible today versus the things that are just not possible until you invest in that data layer and maybe shelve those things or put them, out into the future in their development roadmap. But, things like that happen, right? Like people only have a certain amount of money that they can invest in developing these things. And sometimes that just limits the scope of what's possible.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk a little bit about some new tools that have become available to people recently. You mentioned Claude Cowork, and Claude Code's been around a long time. Talk to me a little bit about what access to these tools mean for regular non-technical people. What are they actually able to accomplish in there?
I mean, you know from experience, right? Having used these tools, what they can do for you. And you've shared with me some of the things that you're doing that are pretty cool. So maybe we'll double click on that and we'll flip the interview around. But yeah, there's some new tools that are available. These are Claude Code, and with OpenAI, it's called Codex. With Google, it's called Anti-Gravity. But these are essentially vibe coding, IDEs, as people call them, where developers know what these are. They've used these for a long time, but this is the AI version of being able to go and talk to a developer that has been trained on every coding language that exists. And as you would go in the past and make a PRD for your developer team to build a new feature or to build a new product for you, you can now, pretend like Claude is your developer or, ChatGPT is your developer with Codex and develop that same PRD that you used to make for your engineering team in the past. I mean, if people don't know what PRD means, that's product requirement stuff, right? And you would do all this documentation. Hey, I want the product to do this. I want it to look like that. I want it to, deliver this. When someone clicks here, do this, do that. And you can take this spec basically to Claude Code, upload it, and Claude Code will go out through all of its vast library of coding knowledge that it has, and it will start to create these things that you are asking it to create. It will actually come up with pretty ingenious ways of doing it too. If you go into plan mode, which insert screenshot of plan mode here, you know, it will come up with a plan of action of how it's going to build this thing. that it submits to you and says, okay, I'm going to use, React code for the front end. I'm going to use like a SQL database for the back end or a Postgres database for the back end or something. And, I'm going to pull data from here and here and here and put it together. And then, this is how I'm going to build it. And you can approve the plan, or you can tell it to change its plan and be like, hey, I don't like that. I don't think that's secure enough. I need you to do something differently or add a security layer or something into it. And you can kind of go back and forth and vibe code whatever it is you're trying to create. All of the platforms have this natural language like capability now to code things. And so another aspect of these platforms is it will spawn sub agents to go out and do these micro tasks. Like one sub agent will go build the front end, one sub agent will go build the back end, and they'll work in parallel to produce this, whatever you have in your PRD as a deliverable to you. It will preview it to you, right there in the terminal, and then you can give it feedback on what you want it to change. Deploy that live code to GitHub. It will put it there, or Vercel if you want it to be like live and online and available for people to use. Vercel's a hosting platform for these vibe coded projects. It's just blowing up right now. And then downstream of that, something interesting happened. Claude, they started using Claude code so much that they started using it in their everyday work, and they ended up creating what we now all use. And, maybe not everybody's using it, but a lot of people are using Claude Cowork, which Claude Cowork is built upon Claude code, just with plugins and skills that are aligned to accomplishing specific tasks. If that's a marketing task or a legal task or a finance task, there are packages of skills called plugins that align to those jobs to be done that are latently in Cowork that you can go and start using right now. And it's using the same processes of spawning multiple agents, putting a plan together, following the plan, and then delivering you the work product that Claude Code was doing. It's built upon Claude Code, and Claude actually is the only one of all of the leading model providers that has this like specific work wrapper layer that exists called Cowork on its IDE, which is Claude Code in the background. OpenAI doesn't have that yet for Codex, and Google doesn't have that with anti-gravity yet, but I'm sure, as these things,
Give it a
probably
few
by
months.
the time people hear this, they will exist in the other platforms, I'm sure, but it's coming. Those are very exciting things that I have seen in this new paradigm with my clients. What's happening is I'm taking agents and agentic flows that I used to build in tools like N8N and Make.com and Zapier, and I'm creating a plugin that does these things. So
Yep.
I'm creating a plugin for Cowork that does the same thing that workflow used to do in Make or in 8N or Zapier. And it's just happening now in Claude instead, end to end. There are pros and cons of this, right? Claude is less deterministic than a workflow. It's still consuming tokens, right? So you're still paying for tokens either way. And, you just have to weigh like which one is right for you and what you're trying to accomplish. Again, sometimes deterministic is better than probabilistic, but it's been a real game changer. People are getting out of like the automations headspace and like automated workflows and automated agents and more into this orchestrator, agent, sub agents, plugins, and Claude Code that do these jobs instead, which is, a new paradigm, I think.
I sort of feel like it's a bit of a leapfrog moment because for me, I'm non-technical. I build stuff all the time, but like I don't have a technical background. I couldn't read a Python script ever if you gave it to me. But what I think for a lot of people was a bit of a barrier for them was the automation space because using an integration tool, Make N8N was highly technical. And for me, it was a blocker. And now with Claude Cowork, the ability to build plugins to do something that previously would have used something like N8N or Make or Zapier is like a bit of a game changer. And now I am able to think the way that I thought this was always supposed to work in the beginning. So for me, it's like should have always been this way. And so I think anyone that's been like kind of on the sidelines watching this happen, it's a really good chance for them to like leapfrog into it because now it might click with their brain a little bit and it requires like a little bit less technical skill to be able to create something that's really valuable for the work that they do.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can build these plugins just if you're in Cowork and you go to the customize tab and then the plus button next to plugins, you can scroll down and hit create with Claude, and then you can just kind of describe to Claude like what this job to be done is, and it can help you create that plugin for, for whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So I highly encourage people to give it a shot. And there's a lot of cool connectors that you can connect to. Like all the time you can connect Slack and Google and, all your other tools so that your plugin can go to your Google Drive or go, post a message to Slack, like when it's done doing its work. And now you can even schedule
Yep.
things to run. So like, there's a scheduler there. And the newest thing that I think is pretty cool is like on mobile, they have a feature called Dispatch where you can like on your mobile app, click on Dispatch and like tell Cowork to do something for you. And it will like wake up your computer at home and like start using Cowork and then like send it to you on mobile. So like if you're out and about, like at the grocery store and you're like, oh, I forgot to, you can like talk to Claude on your phone via Dispatch and like have it use Cowork for you. Pretty cool.
That's kind of nice. That's a good feature. So give me like some guardrails though. So we're talking about vibe coding. We're talking about connectors. We're talking about like the abilities of Cowork, and all of this stuff is like very cool for a lot of people. But talk to me a little bit about some areas of caution. Do we want people to be cognizant of if they're like, I'm going to go build something in Claude Code? What are some things that they should know so that they don't break their entire organization?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I've been advising on this a lot lately where people are starting to, by the time I start consulting with folks, they've gotten dangerous to the point where they're ready to start building agents and agentic flows. And they may have been like kind of in YOLO mode before that. But when it comes to like building automated things that can scale bad outcomes as easily as they can scale good outcomes, it's best to be very careful, right? And so you're mentioning things like governance, right? Like what's my company's policy on processing personal information? What's my company's policy on, writing data into a system? What are our contractual obligations to our clients, right? We may have contracts with certain clients prevent us from doing certain things with their data that other clients don't have that aren't standard. So you're not privy to like all the red lines in every single contract that exists for your company, right? You really need to be careful about like these things in case you violate the terms of an agreement that you have with any customer that's redlined a contract that's probably paying a lot of money.
Yeah.
Consider, what your obligations are to your clients. Some other things to consider too, your token consumption, right? Like how much you're going to be spending when these things go live. So when you're designing and thinking about whatever agent or service you're going to create, it to make that available to everyone, throughout your organization. If it's a really killer app, like you could be looking at people using that quite a bit, and your cost to maintain it and run it could go, up pretty quickly, right? And then all of a sudden you're spending a lot of money to just host this service now that people didn't have before that they love, and how are we going to take it away, right? It's gonna be difficult. Anytime catastrophic failure is the potential outcome, just
Don't do
cross it off. Like
it.
it's not time for AI to do that job.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the noise that's been like in the atmosphere. And I read a lot, and there's a lot out there that I think could potentially be pretty harmful for people when we see things like I've replaced my entire marketing team with 6 prompts, some duct tape, and a couple of hours in Claude Code. What is your response to stuff like that we see? Or I saw a LinkedIn post yesterday and somebody was like, you can automate your entire client services function. And I'm like, no, people, you're losing the plot. What is your response to stuff when you see things like that?
You could certainly see in the future where these like RL models, these like reinforcement learning models come out, and they know how to do certain jobs like on a computer because they've been trained by companies to watch people click around on their computer and do certain functions. And then that data gets labeled and then it gets trained into a new AI model that will come out. And those models are going to come out in the next 12 to 18 months. And there will be like a model that knows how to do job functions at some basic level. You're still always going to need some sort of human oversight of these models and management of these models. What you'll probably start to see is in the future, even in 12 to 24 months, generalists that are basically managing teams of these agents or reinforcement learning trained models will be more common. And then you'll have like someone who is looking at like a business OKR, KPI, or outcome. And then they're going and saying, okay, I need a marketer. I need all these different functions to accomplish this outcome or get me like 60% of the way there. And I need people to do these things. And you're going to have like these like human, like AI engineers, managers, where like they're managing a team of AIs and people to try to achieve this business outcome. And I think that it's going to be much more common in the future that generalists that have good taste, that like know, what good marketing looks like, that know, enough about like the customer and have empathy for their customers and then can manage AIs to accomplish these things. That's probably more the future of the way people are going to work. And people that have those capabilities will be able to do much, much more because let's say like you get that whole flow right for, product A, then you can go do product B, then you can go do product C, have AIs research new products based on new trends and tastes that are coming out, create new offerings, and then create a whole new flow to accomplish that. Right. And that one person's going to be highly, highly leveraged and empowered to do these things. So, I would tell people like the best thing to do is to invest in your taste, right? That you have like good taste, what good looks like, what a good result should be based on all of your experience that you have. Start learning how to use AI and learn these like different layers that you talked about, the components that I talked about. Learn AI from first principles, learn like what AI models do, how AI models work, how they can be applied to your jobs to be done so that you can think and work backwards from these outcomes with these new AI employees that you will have in the future, the very near future, I'm telling you. And you'll be in a good place, right? You'll be equipped to work in this world and you'll have leverage that you've never had before. And you'll be able to accomplish more than you've ever been able to accomplish before. As an employee, you'll be more valuable than you've ever been before. And I would invest in those skills just to future-proof yourself and make sure you're ready for this like new work paradigm that's coming.
Yeah, I wrote about this yesterday. I talked about now's the time the companies that are going to win and the leaders that are going to win are investing in their people actually to upskill them with these types of skills because the human that has the taste, that has like the historical nuance, that has the judgment and has the customer at their, at the center, those plus their AI tools become like a really huge force multiplier that you don't get with either the tool alone or the person alone, but together they become really powerful. I just always come back to the Klarna case study though. Like when you optimize for profit, you're gonna lose because I don't know if everyone has heard of this case study, but Klarna laid off a bunch of their customers like success staff in favor of agents, and they gave the agent the wrong outcome to optimize on, and they decided that they wanted to increase their profits, and it worked like incredibly. They made a ton of money, but what they failed to do was focus on the actual lifetime customer value and how satisfied their customers were. So yes, they made a lot of money in the short term, but they're going to lose money in the long term because they're losing customers because they're optimizing for the wrong thing. And now they're hiring back a bunch of human people
Right.
to go and do this. I think it's such an interesting, we're in such an interesting place. Yes.
Yeah, it's an alignment problem. Yeah.
And so I think it's going to be interesting to see what the future has to hold. But before we wrap up, I just have one more question for you. I'd love to know like what your looking forward to in the world of agency over the next few months? What do you think that you're either going to see or something that you're going to build that you haven't built before?
The next paradigm that's coming again is this reinforcement learning trained model. They use like RL scale models that are about to come out. You've seen OpenAI release their 5.4 model, which is laying the foundation for these reinforcement learning models to come. The reason I say that is this is the first AI model that has native computer use in the model. And what that enables is it enables these new versions of 5.4 that come out with these specific trained skills to use a computer. And so you're going to see these Claude Codex. These are reinforcement trained models for coding, and they're really good at coding. And now there's going to be one for every single thing that you can do on a computer in terms of work that come out in the next 12 to 18 months. Coding was just the first one. If you don't believe me, go listen to Dwarkesh and Dylan Patel talk about it on Dwarkesh's podcast. These things are coming, and they're coming in the next like year. So that will be a game changer. So when Anthropic had a $6 billion month because of Claude Code in February, they're going to have future $6 billion months when these new RL models come out for new lines of business and new use cases. That is going to be the biggest paradigm shift in the next year. And building around those things, customizing those things, your ways of working. My whole business probably shifts into customizing RL models and building harnesses for RL models. That's probably going to be what I'm going to be doing. I haven't built a harness yet. Probably will be building a
Here
harness.
you go. Yeah. All right. We'll watch this space for what's coming next. But I so appreciate your time today, Justin. I know you're super busy. Again, Justin owns a consulting company called Justin GPT, and he helps his customers build automations. He helps them build agents and helps them navigate the complex world of AI. So appreciate your time again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, great to be here, Megan. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to AI in Motion. If today's conversation sparked an idea, share it with your team or continue the conversation with us at Clarity in Motion Collective. We believe AI should give people and organizations clarity and momentum, not more noise. Until next time.